Tonight, strange lights drift over an ancient mountain. Two men lose hours of time beside a desert lake. A possible UFO crash unfolds beneath the shadow of the atomic bomb. And a Nobel Prize-winning scientist encounters something impossible waiting in the woods. Welcome to Strange Encounters. High in the Appalachian foothills, along a remote stretch of ridgeline known as Brown Mountain, people have been reporting strange lights for more than a century. They appear without warning, floating above the trees, moving silently across the valleys, sometimes steady, sometimes flickering, sometimes splitting apart or vanishing without explanation. And despite decades of investigation, no single explanation has ever fully satisfied everyone who has seen them. The story of the Brown Mountain Lights does not begin with certainty. It begins with scattered reports, local curiosity, and a landscape that seems to hold on to its secrets a little too tightly. By the early 1900s, residents living near the Linville Gorge region began describing unusual lights over the mountain ridges. At first, these accounts were dismissed as misidentifications. Distant lanterns, train lights from the valley below, even campfires seen through the haze. But the reports did not stop. Around 1913, newspapers began picking up the story. Witnesses from different locations began describing similar phenomena: glowing orbs hovering above the ridgeline, lights rising and falling with no visible source, objects that seemed too bright, too mobile, and too deliberate to be simple reflections or distant flames. One of the most commonly repeated descriptions from early accounts comes from observers who claimed the lights would appear in clusters, sometimes moving in coordinated patterns. At times, they would drift slowly along the ridgeline. At others, they would shoot upward before fading into the night sky. Some witnesses insisted the lights were white or yellow. Others described them as reddish or orange, almost like embers suspended in the air. What makes these early accounts particularly compelling is not just what people saw, but who was seeing them. These were not isolated reports from a single group or location. Travelers, locals, railroad workers, and visitors all contributed to the growing collection of sightings. As interest grew, so did curiosity from outside the region. By the 1920s, the Brown Mountain Lights had become a recognized regional mystery. Tourists would travel to the overlooks in hopes of seeing the phenomenon for themselves. Some left convinced they had witnessed something unusual. Others left skeptical, attributing what they saw to distant human activity or atmospheric distortion. This growing attention eventually led to formal investigation. In 1922, the United States Geological Survey examined the reports. Geologist George Mansfield conducted an analysis of the region and proposed a series of natural explanations. He suggested that many sightings could be attributed to distant train headlights, automobile lights reflecting through atmospheric layers, or small fires in the valleys below appearing distorted through haze and elevation changes. From a scientific standpoint, the explanation was reasonable. The region's geography is complex, with deep valleys and layered ridges that can easily distort light over long distances, and yet the reports did not disappear. Even after official explanations were offered, people continued to describe lights that did not behave like ordinary reflections or distant lamps. Some witnesses reported lights that changed direction abruptly. Others describe movements that seem to defy the terrain entirely, as though the lights were hovering above the landscape rather than moving across it. Over time, as the phenomenon became more widely known, the story began to change shape in a different way. New layers of folklore were added to the mystery. One of the most widely repeated legends tells of a battle between Native American groups in the distant past, after which women were said to search the battlefield carrying torches. According to this version of the story, the lights seen over Brown Mountain are the spirits or lanterns of those searching figures. However, historians who have examined the record have noted a significant issue. There is little to no evidence of this specific legend in early documented sources. Instead, it appears in written form much later, in the early 20th century, long after the lights had already become a regional curiosity. This has led some researchers to suggest that the legend may not be an ancient tradition at all, but rather a later addition to the story developed as the mystery gained popularity. Whether intentional or not, it is a reminder of how quickly unexplained events can accumulate meaning over time. A natural phenomenon becomes a story, the story becomes folklore, and the folklore eventually becomes inseparable from the mystery itself. Despite these layers of interpretation, the lights themselves remained a consistent subject of observation. In more modern times, various monitoring efforts and repeated visits to the area have continued to produce mixed results. Some nights reveal nothing unusual at all. Other nights, observers claim to see distant flickers or glowing points of light moving along the ridges. Skeptics continue to point to man-made sources, vehicles, railways, atmospheric effects. These explanations account for many sightings, particularly those recorded in clear conditions or near populated areas. But not all reports are easily dismissed. Some witnesses continue to describe lights that appear under conditions where known light sources seem unlikely. Others describe behavior that does not match typical reflections or stationary illumination. This tension between explanation and experience is part of what has kept the Brown Mountain Lights relevant for over a century. And while the phenomenon is often discussed in isolation, it is not unique. Similar reports have been recorded in other parts of the world. In Norway's Hessdalen Valley, unexplained lights have been observed and even studied using scientific equipment, with some events recorded showing unusual movement and persistence. In Texas, the Marfa lights have drawn visitors for generations, appearing along the desert horizon with no definitive agreement on their origin. In Australia, the Min Min lights are said to follow travelers across remote roads, sometimes appearing to mimic movement or maintain distance. Across cultures and continents, reports of unexplained lights in remote landscapes continue to emerge. Whether these phenomena share a common cause or arise from different natural conditions remains unknown, but taken together, they suggest a pattern that is difficult to ignore. The Brown Mountain Lights remain one of the earliest and most persistent examples of this kind of mystery in North America, a phenomenon seen, debated, investigated, and never fully resolved. And perhaps that is what has allowed it to endure. Not certainty, but the steady presence of something just beyond explanation, glowing faintly over ridges of an old mountain that still refuses to give up all of its secrets. It begins with a phone call placed to the National UFO Reporting Center. A man on the other end of the line is unsure whether he even has the right place. He asks if this is the UFO reporting center and if there's someone he can talk to about something that happened to him. The response is calm. Yes, he's speaking to the right person. There's a pause. Then the man hesitates, almost expecting disbelief before he's even told his story. He says it's been bothering him for nearly 2 years. He and a friend had been out near Pyramid Lake outside Reno sometime in the mid-1970s. He can't remember the exact date, just that it was warm, sometime between June and August. They were driving in a convertible Corvette, taking remote desert roads, eventually turning off toward cliffs outside town. It was a normal night. No drinking, no unusual plans, just 2 friends out in the desert. They parked the car and stepped out briefly. That's when they saw it. At first, it looked like a shooting star, a bright object falling fast through the sky. But instead of fading out, it stopped. It held its position in the air, still glowing intensely. Then it began to change. He describes it as a ball of light shifting color: purple, green, orange, yellow, cycling through tones that didn't look natural, not random flashes, more like controlled transitions. And then it moved, not away from them, toward them. He says it came directly over their car, lowering itself until it was right above them in the desert sky. At that moment, he checked the time. It was exactly 11 p.m. That is the last clear, grounded moment he remembers, because after that, there is nothing. No transition, no sequence, no sense of time passing, just a break. The next thing he is aware of, he's back inside the car. He is slumped down in the seat, disoriented, as if he had been asleep, but not in any way he can explain normally. His friend is there too. Both of them are confused. Both of them feel like something is missing. When they check the time again, it is around 1:30 to 2 o'clock in the morning. Nearly 2 hours have disappeared, and neither of them can account for what happened during that period. There had been no alcohol, no drugs, nothing that would explain memory loss, just a gap, a clean break in time. After they regain awareness, things feel off. They decide to leave the area, but the night no longer feels familiar. At one point, they lose their sense of direction entirely. Roads don't seem to match what they remember. Routes they thought they knew no longer make sense. They get turned around in the desert without explanation. At the same time, there's something else. Later, they try a simple test. A compass placed near the back of the car begins to spin uncontrollably, not slowly drifting, spinning wildly, as if something nearby is interfering with it. The man doesn't try to over-explain it. He just repeats what he saw. It spun fast without stopping. Then comes another detail. After the missing time, they see something else in the sky. A large bright object moving along the mountain range. At first, they assume it must be a helicopter or an aircraft. But the movement doesn't match anything familiar. It appears to move too quickly, too smoothly, and at times it seems to shift direction in ways that don't follow normal flight patterns. It moves along the terrain, almost as if it is navigating the landscape rather than simply flying over it. And then it is gone. In the days that follow, something else happens. Both men develop a strange physical reaction. A rash appears on their arms. He struggles to describe it clearly, calling it small bumps, almost like goosebumps that don't go away. It lingers for days, around 2 weeks according to his memory, before it finally fades. The experience doesn't end there. It begins to return in fragments. The man says he has dreams about it, about 6 times since the event. In these dreams, he's back in the desert, back in the car. Sometimes he sees the object again hovering overhead. Other times, the car doors are open, even though they were locked before. He also describes strange imagery, maps, star charts, planetary layouts, a sense that he understands them in the dream but cannot retain them when he wakes up. In one dream, he's shown a map, or something like it, of where things are located in space, but when he wakes up, it's gone. He also mentions something that stayed with him from earlier, that the object, when it hovered above them, didn't look like the typical flying saucer shape he had seen in movies. He even says he doesn't think movies are realistic when it comes to this kind of thing, but in one memory or impression, he describes it as something small, almost like a structure with 3 features underneath it, something like landing elements, something mechanical, but never fully clear. At one point, he says something simple. It felt like they went to sleep and woke up 2 hours later, and nothing in between made sense anymore. He also recalls a later moment, unrelated but still connected in his mind. One night, around 3 in the morning, he sees something shoot straight up into the sky, fast, like a banana-shaped streak of light rising vertically. He later thinks about it and wonders if, turned on its side, it would have looked like a craft. As the call continues, his tone shifts. He is no longer trying to convince anyone. He's trying to understand why it keeps coming back to him, why he keeps seeing fragments, why the missing time never feels resolved. Even after telling friends, even after being laughed at and dismissed as imagination or alcohol, which he insists is not true, the memory remains unchanged. 2 hours gone, a bright object overhead, a compass spinning uncontrollably, a rash that followed, and dreams that won't stop returning. At the end of the call, the operator suggests something like hypnosis might help recover missing details. The man doesn't reject the idea. He just says he wants to know what happened, because whatever it was, it didn't feel like a dream, and it hasn't gone away. In the summer of 1945, the desert of central New Mexico was already living in the shadow of something new and unseen by most of the world. Only weeks had passed since the first atomic explosion at Trinity's site. The sky had flashed with a light brighter than the sun, and the ground had shaken across miles of empty range. People in nearby settlements spoke quietly about it, unsure of what they had witnessed, but certain that something permanent had changed in the land. Out in that same stretch of desert, 2 young boys were moving through the heat on horseback. Jose Padilla and his younger companion, Remy Baca, were searching for a missing cow. It was ordinary work in an ordinary landscape, the kind of task that blended into the rhythm of rural life. But that day, something broke that rhythm. They later described hearing a distant sound first, not thunder, but something sharper, almost like a force tearing through the air itself. It rolled across the desert and faded into silence. The boys paused, listening. Then they continued forward, unaware that they were moving towards something they would never fully agree on in later years. As they crested a low rise in the terrain, the land ahead appeared disturbed. A long groove cut through the desert floor stretched across the sand, as if something heavy had dragged itself into a sudden, violent stop. At the end of that scar was an object unlike anything they had ever seen. It was described as metallic and smooth, shaped somewhere between an egg and an elongated oval. It did not resemble any aircraft they knew. There were no wings, no markings that made sense to them, only a dull surface that reflected the harsh desert light in a muted way. The object rested at an angle, partially embedded in the ground, as if it had struck with great force. As they approached, the boys claimed they noticed movement near the wreckage. Small figures, humanoid in form, were moving around the object. They were described as short and thin, their motions unusual and unsteady. One account recalls a sound unlike anything human, something high and distressing that Jose Padilla later compared to a cry that did not belong to any animal he knew. The boys, frightened but curious, did not immediately flee. Instead, they watched from a distance, trying to understand what they were seeing. In later retellings, they would describe confusion more than fear, as if their minds struggled to categorize the scene in front of them. Then came another shift in the story. According to their accounts, the atmosphere changed when distant activity appeared on the horizon. Vehicles, possibly military, were said to be approaching the area. The boys retreated, moving away from the site while trying to remain unseen. What they witnessed next would become one of the most debated aspects of the case. They later claimed that military personnel arrived quickly and secured the area. The wreckage, according to their testimony, was removed under controlled conditions. The ground was examined, the site was cleared, and the strange object, along with whatever remained of it, was taken away. In the years that followed, the boys said they were warned to stay silent. The memory of that day did not disappear, but it became something they spoke about less openly as time went on. Life moved forward, and the desert reclaimed the scar in the ground. Only decades later did the story resurface publicly when Jose Padilla and Reme Baca began recounting the event in interviews and discussions with researchers. Their descriptions remain consistent in some details, but like many long-buried memories, other parts shifted with time and interpretation. One of the most unusual elements of their account is the connection to the atomic age itself. The Trinity explosion had occurred only weeks earlier, and the entire region was still adjusting to its presence. Some researchers later suggested that if the incident occurred as described, it would place the encounter at a moment when humanity had just revealed nuclear fire to itself for the first time. This overlap has fueled speculation for decades. Some argue that the timing is coincidence, while others see it as part of a broader pattern often discussed in UFO research, where unidentified aerial phenomena appears near nuclear facilities, test sites, and weapon development areas. In later interviews, Padilla claimed that fragments of the object remained in his possession for years. He described them as unusual in weight and texture, though no independent verification has ever confirmed their origin. Researchers who examined the case noted the absence of scientific analysis that could definitively classify the material. Skeptics point out that the story only emerged publicly many years after the alleged event, raising questions about memory, reconstruction, and the influence of later UFO narratives. Others argue that the consistency of the core story between the two witnesses gives it more weight than typical retrospective accounts. Still, the most difficult part of the case to explain remains the original scene described by the boys: a damaged craft in the desert, small humanoid figures moving near it, and a rapid military presence that allegedly removed all trace of the event. Whether interpreted as misidentified military activity, distorted memory, or something far more unusual, the Trinity incident occupies a strange place in the early history of UFO reports. it sits at the threshold of the atomic era, when the world itself seemed to be entering a new and uncertain phase. In later years, the story would take on additional layers as researchers and writers revisited the testimony. Some accounts suggested inconsistencies in timing and recollection, while others emphasized how closely the core narrative aligned between the two witnesses across decades of retelling. The reliability of memory became part of the debate itself, especially given how long the gap was between the alleged event and its public emergence. Jacques Vallée and Paula Harris later brought renewed attention to the case, framing it as one of the earliest alleged crash retrieval incidents in the modern UFO era. Their work highlighted the possibility that the Trinity event, if taken at face value, would predate Roswell by nearly 2 years, placing it at a crucial moment in the development of both nuclear technology and early UFO reporting. Some researchers have pointed out that the desert region around Trinity and White Sands was heavily active with military testing, experimental aircraft, and restricted operations during that period. This has led skeptics to suggest that any unusual sighting could potentially be tied to classified human activity rather than something non-human in origin. However, no known aircraft of the era fully matches the descriptions provided by the witnesses. Another recurring detail in later interviews is the emotional weight the experience seemed to carry for those involved. Padilla, in particular, described the memory as something that never fully left him. Even when he attempted to set it aside, he spoke of the desert itself as a place that held onto events, as if the land preserved echoes of what had occurred there. The presence of alleged physical fragments adds another layer of uncertainty. While no independent laboratory analysis has confirmed their origin, the claim has remained central to the story in public discussions. Without a verifiable chain of custody, the material remains anecdotal, yet it continues to be cited by those who argue the case deserves further investigation. In the broader context of UFO history, the Trinity encounter has become part of a recurring pattern of early post-war sightings linked to emerging nuclear infrastructure. Reports from later decades would echo similar themes, with unidentified objects appearing near missile silos, power plants, and weapons facilities. Whether this represents a meaningful connection or selective pattern recognition remains unresolved. Looking back, the most striking aspect of the story may not be any single detail, but the way it sits at a crossroads of human history. Nuclear weapons had just entered the world. The Cold War had not yet begun. The language to describe unidentified aerial phenomena was still forming. In that brief window, interpretation was fluid and certainty was rare. And so, the account of Jose Padilla and Ramey Baca remained suspended between possibility and doubt, anchored in a specific place and time, yet open to interpretation in almost every direction. It endures not because it is proven, but because it captures a moment when the boundaries of the known world felt, for a brief period, less fixed than they would ever be again. Our story begins deep in the forest of Northern California, in the quiet isolation of Anderson Valley, Mendocino County, during the summer of 1985. The man at the center of this encounter was not a UFO enthusiast, a paranormal investigator, or someone known for telling ghost stories. He was Dr. Kary Mullis, a biochemist whose work would later revolutionize modern genetics, the inventor of the polymerase chain reaction, better known as PCR. a discovery so important that it earned him the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1993. And according to Mullis himself, one night in the woods near his remote cabin, something happened that he could never explain. Something so strange that even decades later, he still spoke about it publicly. The story would eventually appear in his 1998 memoir, Dancing Naked in the Mind Field. And depending on who you ask, it is either one of the most bizarre alien encounter stories ever told, or the account of a profoundly disorientating psychological experience. Either way, it is unforgettable. At the time, Mullis owned a rustic cabin in Anderson Valley, a heavily wooded region in Mendocino County, California. The area was remote, quiet, and dark at night. No city lights, no nearby neighbors, just dense trees, winding roads, and long stretches of wilderness. One summer night in 1985, Mullis arrived at the cabin around midnight after a drive that had taken roughly 3 hours. He carried groceries inside, turned on the cabin lights, which were powered by solar batteries, and then decided to head to the outdoor toilet located about 50 feet away from the cabin. The path led through the trees. Mullis grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the darkness. He never made it to the toilet. Years later, in his own words, Mullis described what happened next. At the far end of the path, beneath a fir tree, he noticed something glowing. At first glance, it appeared to be a raccoon, but something was wrong with it. The creature emitted a strange white glow. When Mullis pointed his flashlight toward it, the beam did not illuminate it normally. Instead, he said the light only made it appear even whiter. Later, Mullis would wonder whether it had been some kind of projection or hallucination. Then, the raccoon spoke. "Good evening, Doctor," Mullis replied instinctively, probably with a simple hello, and then nothing. The next thing he remembered, it was morning. Hours had vanished. Mullis later wrote that he regained awareness while walking uphill along a road above his cabin. The sun was rising, his flashlight was gone, and despite the heavy morning dew covering the surrounding landscape, his clothes were dry. Back at the cabin, everything appeared untouched. The lights were still on. The groceries remained where he had dropped them. But roughly 6 hours had passed with no memory of where he had been or what had happened. There were no injuries, no bruises, no obvious signs of trauma, just a gap in time that he could not account for. For many people, that alone would have been terrifying enough. But according to Mullis, the experience left behind something else, a lingering emotional effect. Later that same day, he noticed that one section of the woods near the cabin had changed for him completely. Before the incident, he considered it the most beautiful part of the property. Afterward, it filled him with dread. He could not explain why. He simply could not bear being near it. The fear lingered for over a year. Finally, in what Mullis later described as a very John Wayne approach to therapy, he armed himself and fired repeatedly into the woods. Oddly enough, he claimed the act worked. The fear faded, but whatever had happened that night remained a mystery. Most people might have buried an experience like this forever, especially someone in Mullis's position. By the time he publicly discussed the incident, he was already world famous in scientific circles. Openly talking about missing time and talking raccoons was not exactly beneficial to the reputation of a Nobel Prize-winning scientist. Yet Mullis continued to tell the story, and over time, the mystery deepened. At some point afterward, Mullis's daughter Louise reportedly experienced something unsettling near the same area. According to Mullis, she disappeared for approximately 3 hours after wandering down the same hill near the cabin. Eventually, she reappeared on the same stretch of road where Mullis himself had regained awareness years earlier. Her fiancé had reportedly become frantic and was preparing to contact local authorities. The incident disturbed Mullis deeply because of the similarities. Even stranger, Mullis later claimed his daughter encouraged him to read Communion by author and alleged abductee Whitley Strieber, one of the most famous alien abduction books ever written. But perhaps the strangest chapter in the story involved another witness entirely. According to later accounts discussed by Australian UFO researcher Bill Chalker, a friend visiting the cabin for the first time experienced something bizarre while walking the same path between the cabin and the outdoor toilet. This man reportedly knew nothing about Mullis's earlier experience. As he moved through the darkness, he too encountered what appeared to be a glowing raccoon. Panicked, he turned and hurried uphill toward the house. Then things became even stranger. The witness allegedly saw a small glowing humanoid figure standing nearby. As he watched, the figure expanded, growing larger until it resembled a full-size man. The figure reportedly spoke to him, "I'll see you tomorrow." Terrified, the man fled. He later returned to a nearby hotel with a friend, but did not tell anyone what had happened. That night, however, the witness allegedly awoke outside in the hotel parking lot, frightened and confused, with the disturbing sensation that he had somehow returned to the Mullis cabin without remembering how. The following evening, he and his friend returned to the cabin where a party was still underway, and according to the story, the witness suddenly froze in horror. Driving up to the gathering was the same full-size man he believed he had seen emerging from the glowing figure the night before. Unable to cope with what he believed he had witnessed, the man reportedly fled the scene once again. Sometimes later, emotionally shaken and in tears, he finally told Mullis the entire story. Mullis identified the mysterious figure as one of his elderly neighbors. When questioned afterward, the neighbor confirmed he had indeed arrived at the cabin party on the second night, but he insisted he had not been present on the first night when the glowing apparition had allegedly appeared, and so the mystery remained unresolved. Over the years, researchers and readers have struggled to interpret what exactly happened in Anderson Valley. Some view the case as a classic missing time encounter connected to alien abduction phenomena. Others see it as a psychological or neurological episode brought on by fatigue, darkness, stress, or altered states of consciousness. Skeptics frequently point out that Mullis openly discussed his past experimentation with psychedelic drugs. However, Mullis himself maintained that he was not under the influence during the incident, and unlike many alleged abduction cases, Mullis never claimed to remember spaceships, medical examinations, or extraterrestrial beings. The experience remained fragmented and dreamlike, more a whole in reality than a complete narrative. That ambiguity is precisely why the case continues to fascinate people decades later. On one hand, there is no physical evidence, no photographs, no medical documentation, no police reports, no hypnotic regression sessions ever publicly conducted. Much of the secondary witness material survives only through retellings, and the details themselves sound almost absurd. A glowing raccoon politely greeting a Nobel Prize-winning scientist in the woods at midnight? Yet, on the other hand, the witness was Kary Mullis himself, a man widely recognized as brilliant, unconventional, and intellectually fearless, someone fully aware that publicly sharing such a story could damage his reputation, and despite that, he continued telling it, not as proof of extraterrestrials, not even with certainty about what he had seen, but as a genuinely unexplained experience that profoundly disturbed him. Perhaps this is why the case endures, not because it proves alien abduction, but because it occupies that uncomfortable territory between hallucination, folklore, psychology, and something far stranger. A story told not by an anonymous witness hidden in the shadows, but by one of the most accomplished scientists of the 20th century. And even he never found an explanation for what waited beneath the trees that night in Anderson Valley. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts. It really helps the channel grow. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next episode of Strange Encounters.